This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, here we are again, Father Louis Salvatore, District Deputy with Father Art Aguilar, and today we have a special guest, uh, Father Jeff Henry from St. Michael's and Travis Air Force Base. Father Jeff, thank you so much for joining us today. It's certainly a pleasure to have you with us.
Nice to be meeting with you as well.
Okay, so let's get started. Father Jeff, you're a Knight of Columbus, correct?
Yes, sir.
So, if you can, briefly, what was it that kind of inspired you to join the Knights, this organization?
Well, what inspired me to join the Knights of Columbus was my boss. It was Father Bob Cannon was he's a fourth degree knight, and he was the wing chaplain here, and I came in as what's called a GS, or a civil service priest, and he said, would you consider joining the Knights and be the chaplain, because I don't have time to be with them as much as I would like, because being the wing chaplain is more it's not tactical, it's not on the ground, it's up above doing the doing more of the overarching sort of things, that supervisory things. And I said, sure, and I did that, and so I started at that moment, and I really had no experience with the Knights of Columbus, and I'm still learning a lot over the past 5 years of what it means to be a knight. I've got a long ways to go, in all honesty.
Thank you. So, Father, the Knights of Columbus say that they live by the principles of charity, unity, fraternity, and patriotism.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that to be the case, at St. Michael's? If so, is there kind of one specific area that they excel in?
I'd say, of course, obviously patriotism. We have all these vets out here, and we have those who are active duty and our members. They're sworn to abide by to support the Constitution. It doesn't get more patriotic than that. And I'll tell you, even our older members who are in the Knights, who may have been out of the military for years, they still roll with the military. They identify this is in their DNA. And the longer a person is in the military, when you get to be some of the 30-year guys, they still bleed blue. So it's very strong. Fraternity goes with that. The whole understanding of the tribe, supporting one another, and we keep encouraging that. When I came to the chapel, just speaking in general, after having been in civilian parishes and churches over the years, there's a different sense about it, about duty and honor, of course, and response to the need at hand. The mission is always being spoken of. That's what appeals to our younger active duty. Recently I've spoken to somebody who just really impressed me, a young guy, about the importance of being part of a mission to serve God through serving one's neighbor. So it's very, very strong in that way. And of course that's always being motivated and generated by charity, by love of God and love of neighbor.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, and Brother Art, if you have any questions, you can jump in too.
Sure. Father Jeff, I have a question.
They have to be questions, okay?
Okay.
Not statements.
The question I have is when you joined the Knights of Columbus, what with the brotherhood that is really inspiring you as being a brother?
I would say with regard to that, they're good intentions. I know it sounds funny to say, but you just can't help but appreciate their hearts. And I know that goes over a number of the whole things: charity, fraternity, patriot, all these things. They're here for the right reasons. They really are. And it's an interesting thing with the military. One of the ways that they're evaluated are called the OPRs and their EPRs, and what they record, things that they do with work and also in service and communities. And I think sometimes this gets recorded in their duties as knights, but I don't believe that's the reason the majority of them do the things that they do. They do it because they really do care. And I value their hearts. Doesn't mean we get everything right. That's obvious. And we're all sinners, but we're slouching our way to the New Jerusalem through the Knights of Columbus.
Well, how do you
Go ahead.
how do you feel that in regards to your inspiration that you just described, what do you think is the best way we can do to relay that to the younger generation so they can know what we know?
Well, you know, you're going into one of the questions I think that are going to be asked in a while by Lewis. So why don't we do this if it's all right, Lewis? Would you like to go to that question and just?
Oh, did I miss that? Did I miss that? That was my fault then.
No, you're good. I think this is a good transition to another question.
So the question was, Father Jeff, so for you too, Brother Art, when people think of the Knights of Columbus, they get kind of a picture in their mind because they see these gray-haired men flipping pancakes, and
There it is.
and that's their impression of the Knights. That's the initial impression. So, Father Jeff, if you could please address the younger generation for us, explain to them why it is in their interest to join an organization like the Knights of Columbus.
But one of the things is that you raised an interesting thought there, that we are aware of that stereotype or that understanding or that viewpoint, that perception. And one of the difficulties we have as Knights is that the Knights is basically, it's off a paradigm from the 20th century. And we're now in the 21st century with younger guys out there, and there's a slightly different way of speaking and a way of communicating. And one of the things that's impressed me is that I'm seeing the Knights saying, how do we communicate our from Father McGivney and all the things that we've attained over 100 years? How do we take that and translate it into a generation of people that were born in the 21st century? And it's a fascinating quandary, but what I'm seeing is that it's small things becoming more transparent in some of the things that we do with regard to meeting and sharing our traditions and our rights. I see even things like making the beret part of the uniform to wear at times. These things, they might seem small, but really what they are is an attempt to communicate with people who are slightly of a different culture, and that impresses me. And so I would encourage the young guys out there to understand that the age-old truths of things like charity, patriotism, fraternity, all these things never change.
Yeah.
They just get redefined. It's like Vatican II. Vatican II didn't introduce anything new. All that it did is redefine what's already there. And that's what we do. We do it constantly. We constantly have to be reborn, just like in our Christian faith. Every day is new with an opportunity to express the age-old truths in a contemporary manner.
Good. So the Knights also say they are the strong right arm of the church. We are supposed to be there as Knights of Columbus. We're supposed to be there to help our pastor, to help our church in whatever they need. So here at St. Michael's, is that the case at St. Michael's with you yourself and your council there? Are they there for you when you need them?
Well, when you say they're the strong right arm, I'm going to have to say yes, because if it's a strong right arm, if I say no, they might beat me up. But
And that would be the strong right arm.
yeah, they're constantly saying, well, what do you need? How can we help? What is it that you need? And I would say at times it's more difficult to get the response because of COVID. And that's this whole thing that but the whole church is experiencing that. And the whole thing about fraternity and brotherhood and unity it's sisterhood, if you will, is that we have to keep redoubling our efforts in order to do that. But I am very comfortable that if I want to go to talk to one of the Knights and one of the leaders of the council, they will listen and they will support it. There's
Right.
They offer insight also, which is very valid. I don't have all the answers, but a lot of times they got some very wise Knights that have a lot to offer, a lot of experiences that we priests and chaplains and things like that can benefit from we have the ears to hear.
And I think as far as the Knights in your council there at St. Michael's, they and I've always asked this question, you know, usually the little kids when they grow up, it's the question they ask their parents all the time. Why? 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 The council at St. Michael's, they get the why. They know why they're doing what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
They know that it's a higher power. They know they're doing it for the glory of God. They know that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what I think is so special about the council there at St. Michael's. And I think you would agree that they're not doing it for their self-edification. They're doing it for a different reason. And I think that comes from yourself, because I think it comes, and as everything is successful by leadership, it can be failed by leadership too. So I think that the council there is very strong. It has a good base on the base, and I think that I expect a lot of good things from that council, and I appreciate your being with us today. And I hope that whoever sees this video will kind of have a good perspective about the Knights of Columbus, and and especially there, in particular at St. Michael's, and they can know what you guys stand for. And if you have any other, either one of you has any other like final remarks before we close?
Well, I have another question for you, Father.
No more questions. Questions are over. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. St. Michael's has a different dynamic than most councils because, well, number one, it's a little smaller because it's on the base. Number two is that there is a shuffling of personnel. I'm trying to do Army talk here. My father was in the Army for 28 years. I'm trying to think of how he was to say it. But now, like, for instance, if you were to go to a young prospective brother, or even an older one, and the reason why I say young, because they are the ones that usually are temporary assignments on the base. They're there and then they get redeployed somewhere else, that kind of thing. What do you guys do differently to be able to take on those challenges? Meaning that knowing that, okay, I can talk to him. I only have a certain amount of time because he may be deployed within 6 months, a year, whatever. And then how do you go about contending with that?
That's a good question. We have a turnover about every 2 years. We call it PCSing. Some of them PCS, they transfer to another base, or they deploy. Those are 6 months at a time, and some people separate after 20 years, 30 years. So there is this flux. The people that retire usually stay because they get, like I said, if they get tied into the military, and the base becomes sort of like a second home for them. With regard to those that are moving around, I have to, when I first got into the Knights, one of our brother Knights, and I'm sure you know him, Rich, who was here, he's now moved. His family's moved. He's retired for a number of years from the military, but he's still involved. But he was a model for me. He was constantly recruiting. He knew names of everybody who came to visit, because it's that whole thing. We have to, in order to find ways to bring people in and to keep people in the Knights, even if they move on, is by planting seeds here, we're hoping to develop people that will be able to service other Knights in other places as this moves, other councils, as this moves along. And I think it's been very effective. And again, the difficulty, and this is something we're trying to figure out now, is how do we do that when everybody is sheltering in place or next to it? We're not hunkering down anymore, but like at the base, we're not even allowed to be in the same chapel together. That's one of the reasons, by the way, we went back outside. We were doing parking lot mass, but we just said, it's time to pull out the chairs again and get together, because we need that. And it was very interesting at the mass last Sunday. I was thinking about this. There were people, even wearing their masks, you could tell they were emotionally touched by being together and worshiping. It was powerful. It was powerful to see that. And that's what we as Knights, we need to be present We need to be visible. We need to be there so that when these people are there, when the young men come in and we see somebody we don't recognize, we have to have the effrontery or the guts to go and introduce ourselves and say, hey, who are you? Why are you a knight? You're not. Well, why not? This is what we're about. I think, and that's what I'm finding. And one of the things that helps out here, I was communicating with our Worthy Grand Knight the other day about some people, and I said, well, what happened to this person? I haven't heard from this person. I talked to them months ago, and they said, oh, their paperwork's about done. So the follow-up is really critical to it. I'm not telling you guys anything you don't know, but I think we just have to be assertive, and we have to have good follow-up.
Yeah. Okay, any other, that's it? Unless you have something else?
No, but I do have a closing remark. Thank you very much, Father, for your time today. It was very informative, and it really brought into perspective how deeply passionate you are regarding the faith, and I truly respect that.
Well, this is the only reason we exist.
Yeah.
It's found, but I don't want to weird anybody out, but this is the only reason we exist. And if anything else, if it's for any other reason, we're being idolatrous.
Yeah.
We're here for the Lord, and everything.
I agree.
So, that's why I say, why the guy made you to love him, to serve him in this life and in the next. That's what we're supposed to be doing. And I will, just so everybody knows, I went to a mass at St. Michael's when we were doing a church drive. And what touched me about Father Jeff is that he didn't just stay at the pulpit and start preaching. You have to be careful because he walks around, and it's like, this is very personal. He's going to ask me a question. I said,
he got it. I was an old teacher. That's the way you made sure the kids weren't on their phone. Writing notes.
It's like, I remember when the old Baltimore Catechism, they always just drill the questions into.
Oh,
Who's
yeah.
God? Yeah. So anyway.
I will mention one other thing. I don't do it now because of COVID, but I used to walk around, especially if people look like they're about to fall asleep. I would start walking towards them. There's a little bit of fun there.
I'll tell you one thing. When COVID started, Father, you were doing those daily inspirational messages on Facebook. I missed those.
Oh, I'm still doing them.
I haven't seen one. I gotta go look.
Yeah, I don't not mean to self-advertise here, but it's Travis AFB Catholic on YouTube. So
okay, I'm gonna look that up.
A lot of people are gonna get that message when I put this on my YouTube channel, so they're all gonna get that message.
Yeah, sign up. We need to get 1,000. We're trying to get 1,000 people so that YouTube will be nicer to us. Yeah, they have all these. You get under 1,000, under 1,000, you have all these difficulties as far as being able to broadcast. But if you have under that, they leave you alone. So
those were very powerful. I mean, with that, when they first started the pandemic and all the COVID stuff, that's when everybody needed to be inspired the most. I mean, that was the most troubling part because none of us understood exactly what we were getting into.
Yeah, that's scary. It's scary.
And those things, what you did helped out immensely. It was so I made it, excuse the pun, I religiously watched them every morning.
Well, go ahead, Liz.
I think that if anything, I talked this to my wife. It's a little odd that I'm going to say this, but I think it's the best thing that happened to us is this COVID, because it brought me. We were close, but we're even closer to God now. We did more spiritual reading. We do them every day. We're consecrated to Mary. We're consecrated to Joseph. It brings. I think it's just the antithesis of what Satan had in mind. Yeah. I think his idea was to separate his children from God, and I think it's having the opposite effect. I think it's bringing people closer.
Absolutely.
Last year was a year of difficulties of biblical proportions. We had fire, we had pandemic. I mean, those are big words. I mean, those are big issues, and it was scary. It was the fires were scary too. You didn't know. There was a time when I talking about the videos. There was a time with one of the videos I didn't know if I was going to see my family again. because I was still home. I didn't evacuate, and I didn't know if I'd waited too long. And thanks be to God, my block of Vacaville didn't have to evacuate after all. But that was one of those when we really have to ask ourselves, are we really going to trust God? So I think you guys are exactly on target with that.
Okay, I'm going to turn the recording off if that's okay. And then